Chairman Barrasso, thank you, and I want to say to you and to all our guests, the Finance Committee and the Intelligence Committee, two other committees, are places where I also have to be within the next 15 minutes. So I am going to be back and forth some, and I don't want any of you to walk away with a sense that somehow this is not of enormous importance. It is. Oregonians, like those from Wyoming, are no strangers to the profound local changes that can come from listing an animal under the Endangered Species Act. So it should be no surprise that the possibility that the greater sage grouse would be listed as a threatened or endangered species is important in Oregon, and the fact is it's important to lots of people across the West. I recently had town hall meetings, for example, in eastern Oregon. That is sage grouse country, and there is a lot of work being done to implement sage grouse restoration plans. People ask me about it at the town meetings. Because of all this work, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Agency decided against listing the greater sage grouse. In my view, the decision not to list was a victory for all Westerners. The Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service's updated land use plans that build off the local collaboration that I heard discussed just a few days ago in eastern Oregon were, in my view, critical factors in the decision to not list the bird. Put simply, local folks got together to protect habitat to avoid a sage grouse listing. And while no land use plan is perfect, and I told everybody at those town meetings in eastern Oregon that I'm certainly open to ideas and suggestions, the plans provide a roadmap for conservation, a way forward for ranchers, and some real certainty for rural communities that rely on multiple uses of public lands. In my view, what the decision not to list the sage grouse was all about was sort of a referendum on the proposition that working together, collaborating, actually pays off. Coming up with locally based solutions that serve the interests of everybody involved is government the way people tell me at town hall meetings. It's the way government is supposed to work. So that is why I believe it's very troubling to see that some of our colleagues in the other body in the House somehow think it makes sense to seize defeat from the jaws of victory. This year, the House of Representatives in their defense authorization bill contains a sage grouse poison pill that would snuff out the years of collaboration that went into avoiding an endangered species listing in the first place. In addition to handing control of public lands over to the states and weakening the protections for the sage grouse, the decision prevents the Fish and Wildlife Service from revisiting its listing decision for at least 10 years, which are only going to increase the odds of an endangered species listing in the long term. This, in my view, is a frustrating and exasperating example of Congress making important endangered species decisions based on politics rather than science and collaboration. The Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service have worked together and with local stakeholders to create plans that are critical for ensuring continued multiple use of public lands throughout the West. That is almost an obligatory statement I make at a town hall meeting in rural Oregon, is we ought to be building on the notion of multiple use of public lands in our part of the country, and that's what's being done here. The collective efforts of local stakeholders protect sage grouse and habitat and ecosystems, but are also key to benefiting local, usually agricultural economies and continuing multiple rangeland uses that almost always involve grazing and recreation. So I thank the panel for their input. I look forward to working with my colleagues on this in a bipartisan manner. This committee, colleagues, particularly for some of our newer members, has such a long, long history of working in a bipartisan way. This is where we wrote the Secure Rural Schools bill for example. So we have a long history of working together in a bipartisan way to ensure the continued health and prosperity of our nation's public lands. I especially want to thank Ms. McDonald with the Nature Conservancy for making the trek. I apologize for the bad manners of coming in and out, but you've been on the ground, as I understand it, working on sage grouse issues in Harney County. A lot of people in this room have probably heard of Harney County now as a result of the last few months. And you're doing work to bring people together in Harney County, to collaborate, to show that it's possible to find common ground. And I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make sure that your hard work doesn't go by the boards. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.